It began not too long ago. A few PlayStation 4 exclusive games, some published by Sony, some published by others, began appearing on Steam. Headlines were made when that game company and Quantic Dream took their stalwart titles and put them on PC. But it wouldn't end there. On August 7th, 2020, Guerrilla Games' Horizon Zero Dawn made its way onto Steam, having formerly been a PlayStation 4 exclusive title, and it was shortly followed by Days Gone, made by Sony Bend on May 18th, 2021. Sony sees success in these releases, despite the fact that these PC versions sell a lot worse than they ever did on PS4. But despite that, it seems like very soon we'll be seeing a lot more exclusives become non-exclusives when it comes to PlayStation.
Exclusives are as old as gaming itself. When arcade machines began popping up in the 70s, it was the only way you could even play video games. Home consoles? The Magnavox Odyssey came out in 1972, but those arcade games wouldn't see any decent home versions until a decade later. PCs? Unaffordable until the 80s, and they only had access to very basic games for a long time. For the longest time, in fact, home consoles were chasing after their arcade older brothers, with arcades providing graphically superior games really until arcades died out altogether. As a result, we saw the best versions of games, or in many cases, outright exclusive games only in bowling alleys, movie theater lobbies, and yes, arcades. This tendency carried over to consoles and PCs, and these platforms stayed in their own lanes for the most part. PC is where you'd find point-and-click adventures and first-person shooters, and consoles were where it was at for platformers and fighting games. More specifically, Nintendo struck gold with Mario as their mascot, who began appearing in a myriad of their games, whether you'd control him as the player or not. Sega introduced Sonic a few years later, and thus the console wars began. Playgrounds across the world found lines drawn and shots fired. Verbally, of course, but sides were taken nonetheless, and both sides took their battle positions, lauding their platform exclusives as the reason the system they got for Christmas was better than the one they didn't. Now that video games are a 50-year-old plus pastime, we still see exclusivity as one of the biggest reasons to pick up a console or hook up a gaming PC. Want to play the next Smash Bros. Game? Better pick up the Nintendo Switch. Can't wait to play Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart? Hope you can find a PlayStation 5. Want to play Halo Infinite? You'll need an Xbox Series X, or S, or Xbox One. Heck, just a PC will do for any Xbox titles released these days.
So, exclusive games. Are they good or bad for both gamers and companies alike? We're going to take a look at the prevailing arguments on both sides of what may end up being the Console Wars 2.0, the Exclusionary Wars. Nah, that's a dumb name. Hey, this is hard. You come up with something.
What are some of the bad aspects of platform exclusivity? Well, one argument I hear quite a bit is that exclusivity itself isn't all that great. Fewer people can enjoy exclusive games by the nature of them only being available on one console or PC. Gamers have been accused lately of doing a lot of gatekeeping. We make things difficult for those who are considering getting into the hobby, and when a game is available only in one place, that's yet another example. And if you're the type of person who doesn't care much for the console wars, then you probably grow weary of the various arguments stating, my gaming platform of choice is better than yours because I can play game X on it. Those are aspects which can affect gamers and the narrative surrounding gaming, but what about the companies which make those games? What's negative about exclusivity for them? Well, Sony is making more money now that Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone are available on PC as well as PlayStation 4. Those PC sales never would have found their way into Sony's wallet had those games only stayed on PlayStation systems. So they are making more money off of games that had probably run their course on the console side. There's also the chance that you might even win over your new fans to your side. With Horizon Zero Dawn going over to PC, Sony is getting more people aware of the franchise. Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel due out in a matter of months, will only be available on PS4 and PS5. If these PC players really enjoyed the first game, they may just take the bait and go out to purchase a PlayStation to play the sequel. Now for the reasons for exclusivity. When someone buys a product, and that product comes with certain promises and expectations, it's generally good business practice to fulfill those. In the case of game platforms, whether it's PC or console, exclusive games, like it or not, are a big reason for someone to invest in the platform in the first place. Want to play Mario and Zelda? You have to own a Switch. Nintendo gamers understand that when they buy a Nintendo console, they will have sole access to games that simply will not be available anywhere else. That in turn can swing their decision on whether they buy one game machine over another, and personally, I don't even begin to consider buying a new console until there is going to be a game on it that I simply can't play on anything I currently own. A more technical reason in favor of exclusivity is exclusive games tend to be better optimized for the systems they were designed to run on. Third-party multi-platform games just about never receive the amount of attention required to take advantage of particular characteristics one system may have that puts them over another. Some great examples of this would have to be the 360 versus PS3 era. As a rule of thumb, the multi-platform games ran better on the 360. It shared its architecture with PCs, where games are created in the first place, and it was generally easy to transfer those games over to the 360. The PS3 had a much more complicated and arguably more powerful architecture that companies couldn't be bothered to take advantage of sometimes. Those games simply ran better on the easier to understand and develop for 360. But the Sony exclusive games on PS3 tended to be optimized to the point where they looked better and ran just as well as those 360 games. This was due to studios such as Naughty Dog and Santa Monica Studios taking their time and tailor-making their games to look and run as well as they possibly could, because they only had one set of hardware to worry about, not two or three. Finally, and probably most importantly, exclusives add value to their platform. Nintendo keeps their titles exclusive, with a few mobile games here and there, but nothing major. And it works for them. Sony up until recently followed the same strategy, keeping their vaunted franchises like God of War and Uncharted only available on PlayStation. Want to play them? Buy a PlayStation. But when we look at Xbox, they began to stop having any platform exclusives. All Xbox games began coming to PC as well as Xbox, and the name Xbox has become more of just a brand name rather than the name of a particular console. The 360 sold extremely well, and one of the reasons it did was all the great games you couldn't find anywhere else, including PC. That changed once the Xbox One launched. And sure, there were other factors involved in that system not selling very well, but I would argue the loss of all exclusive games was one of them. Why buy an Xbox when you can play the games on your computer? It doesn't make sense to buy a console when your PC has access to the very same games.
If I haven't made it obvious enough yet about which side of this debate that I fall on, I definitely would have to say that I prefer the value that only exclusive games can bring to a platform, rather than some homogenized one-size-fits-all approach. Here's the bottom line.
From a business point of view, sure, you may make a little more money from new players, but get this. Horizon Zero Dawn sold well over 10 million copies on PS4, and on PC it hasn't even sold 1 million yet. It's been out for about a year now on Steam, so it's pretty safe to say it's not going to sell nearly as well on PC. It's also been estimated that 35% of those PC players already played it on PS4, so you're not reaching quite as many new players as you might think. I can't really imagine anyone being convinced to go out and buy a PS4 or PS5 just to play Horizon Forbidden West. But hey, if that does describe you, let me know in the comments. At best, I'd say you'll just end up devaluing your brand, since what was once an exclusive title only available on your platform is now available on a platform you should be competing against. This is Business 101. You can't buy an Android phone from Apple, or a Big Mac from Burger King, or a pair of Nikes from Reebok. When you sell your products through a competitor, why would they bother buying it from you anymore? What's the incentive? In the long run, the value you have sold away from your platform will not have been worth the tiny number of sales and fans you may gain. From a gamer's point of view, it may seem like it's only a good thing for more gamers to play the same games we like to play. It's not a bad argument, but what if Sony decides one day it's not worth making PlayStation consoles anymore? What if they are convinced it would be more cost-effective to make PlayStation nothing more than just a brand of game studios owned by Sony, and just release everything on PC? Well, hope you're ready to shell out thousands of dollars for a new gaming PC, or even just a new graphics card every few years to keep playing those games. Because the days of paying only hundreds of dollars for a new console will be done at that point. Do you really want PlayStation to look like Xbox? Because that's where this is headed, though probably at a much slower pace.
Which school of thought do you fall into? Do you think Sony is making the wisest decision by spreading their games to PC? Or should they just stick with their own console? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to keep on top of the videos, definitely take a sec to subscribe. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to follow me across the internet. Level 1 Sword also has a weekly podcast, so give it a listen.